and welcome back to Real Seekers. I'm your host, Dale, the Real Seeker, and this is going to be part 2 of the old SNS show, the season finale for our first season. So this is the continuation, part 2 of the conversation. Again, I split it up into 2 parts because it was over 4 hours long, so I wanted to break it up into two-hour chunks for you guys. So here's the continuation. I've put a little bit of the prior conversation into it so you can lead into the next part, but otherwise enjoy the show. All right, take care.
We can get smarter in sciences, we can get smarter in history, but it doesn't actually help us validate religious claims. And so when people making different religious claims are trying to vie for our attention in our agreement, there is no mechanism like science to figure out which one is right. There's no way to conclude that, and so that was my ultimate point. I didn't want that to get lost. I said that I would roll scientism up in here, but the next time I come back, I will attack scientism. In the meantime, do you have another rebuttal for me?
Okay, so your next thing is be true to your morality. Okay, so now we can talk about this directly, even though it was hinted at before. So be true to your morality. Yes, God created us with a moral conscience that provides us with moral knowledge. Absolutely, I would follow that, even against the Bible in certain circumstances. If the Bible said, look, either 1 + 1 = 2, so it violates my rational faculties, or on a moral sense, if it orders me to go around raping every person in existence, or I wouldn't do that, or to torture innocent babies for fun, I wouldn't do that. My moral conscience is providing me with a sufficient amount of knowledge in that case to overturn propositional knowledge from a book which is provably tainted with corrupt humanity in certain places. So yeah, you follow the evidence as best you can from all the various sources of knowledge that God provides you to come to moral knowledge. Now you have to recognize, but I think that comes, look, you need to recognize morality is just as tainted to greater and lesser extents in certain humans as the Bible is corrupted with corrupt errors in humans and stuff like that, humanity as well. Adolf Hitler thought he was doing the moral thing. He really did. He believed that Aryan race, this is the future, man. This is progressing towards human perfection, getting rid of all these, he classified the Jews first, blacks, homosexuals, all of that. He had like a list of who to get rid of first, who was the worst of the scum of humanity, so to speak, in order to bring about that state of perfection. So it's obvious that our moral consciences are not infallible. And you need to recognize that when making moral decisions. So always being true to your moral sense is not necessarily always the right thing to do. It could lead us into moral error, and often does. I'm a case in point for you skeptics. You think I'm making a moral error judgment, and with my Molinistic defeater, for example. And I just wanted to point out, that isn't me being biased as a Christian. I had that opinion before I was a Christian. Even if you converted me to being an atheist, I would still have that opinion. If a morally perfect God, and I had knowledge that a morally perfect God told me to do it, I would do it. Even if I'm an atheist and I don't believe that there is such a God, I would still answer the same way. So that it isn't a Christian bias with my answer here. So yeah, I think it depends to what degree of certainty you have on morality. Are you 100% certain this is wrong? 95%? Some areas are moral gray zones. Maybe you're 60, 40. So, divine revelation can trump that if you have good reason to suppose that God would not allow moral commandment errors in the Bible. I'm 95% certain God wouldn't allow that because that would cause undue confusion. If I was 60% sure, let's say, for example, that a certain command in the Bible was immoral, based on my moral conscience, I would privilege the Bible over that because I have more sufficient warrant to believe that the moral knowledge in that is probably more reliable than my moral conscience is telling me. On the flip side, if I was 97% sure that doing something was wrong based on my moral conscience, while I'm only 95% sure that the Bible provides good moral knowledge, I would privilege my conscience over the Bible. So yeah, I think that's my main point: is recognize, look, we are morally fallible. Our moral conscience is not an infallible guide to moral behavior in every case.
Okay, so allow me to pull a Justin Brierley in one of the worst things I think he does. I have a point to it, though, and I don't think he does. Can you tell me why rape is wrong? Because you said that you wouldn't go around raping people, even if you were told to do so. Why? Why is rape wrong?
Yeah, so if you remember, when I was giving my Molinistic defeater, this came up between me and Sarah. I remember sort of questioning, well, isn't the salvation of a soul worth the temporary punishment of raping? Why do I allow it? Why am I cool with killing, the taking of a human life, but raping is a no? And I sort of wrestled back and forth. And I remember coming back, I'm like, my answer is no, you can't do that, after thinking about it. And Sarah was like, well, what's the difference? Why, from a rational perspective, what is the difference? And the only thing I could say is, well, look, I'm a deontologist, so a rule-based ethics. My moral conscience provides me with strong enough moral knowledge, so beyond 95%, that doing so is wrong.
Oh,
so
sorry, would you explain deontology?
Deontology, so in ethics, I think we've gone into that into the show. So deontology is rule-based ethics. So you have certain necessary moral rules that come from God, and He provides you moral duties and that sort of thing. He's the foundation of morality. It is, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not rape. This is deontology.
So there is no thou shalt not rape, but go ahead.
But I was putting it in as an example, right?
Sure. I'm just clarifying for the reader who thinks the Bible says thou shalt not rape. It does not.
Good for you.
So you know that Christians don't read their Bible. I think it's there.
But yeah, and for my case, though, I think that good for you. Literally, yeah, that is good to clarify. But in addition to that, I'm also a virtue ethicist. So why do we follow the rules? Because it creates certain virtues within us, character traits that are fit for heaven. This is why I follow these necessary moral principles and necessary moral duties that God creates for us, and that sort of thing. So that's how I see morality working. What was your question again? Sorry.
Yeah, why is rape wrong?
Yeah, so the way I'm not going to answer why is rape wrong. I think you want to know, how do I know rape is wrong? Is that really what you're asking?
Well, I don't know. Because you saying that you're a deontologist doesn't help, because there's no rule that says rape is wrong. So I'm trying to figure out why you think it's wrong. If there's no specific rule that says it's wrong,
there's a rule. It's not in the Bible.
Okay, so it's not in the Bible.
It's not explicitly in the Bible. Put it that way.
Right. So we agree with that, and so you can come around the mountain and get to rape being wrong by other means, indirectly.
Yes,
but that's not exactly the deontology way to do it. So I am still trying to understand at the heart of it why the Christian would think that rape is wrong. Now, I understand why the humanist would think that. But right. Justin asks this as some kind of gotcha, as if to say, well, we have no reason to think it's wrong. I would actually say the shoe's on the other foot here. So I've never actually asked a Christian in this situation why you think rape is wrong, but I've always wanted to. And I'm trying to get a sense of this, because you're attacking human morality. And I say human morality is far higher than any sacred morality that you get from your God or the Bible or anything else. So why do you think it's wrong?
Right. So a deontological approach, it's not just moral duties or specific explicit commandments and rules. There are also rules for following moral principles. Moral duties and actions on a tactile level, as I call it.
Okay. So what is the moral principle then that makes rape wrong?
So there are multiple ones. Principle of beneficence, or the principle of malfeasance.
Okay, well, wait. Okay, these are great pieces of terminology here, but how do we know that rape isn't beneficent or that it is malfeasance? Who's to say that it is?
Well, in the first place, you can observe the effects that it's harmful to human beings. It causes harm to them. It obviously violates their autonomy. They're not consenting.
Well, I understand that the people raped don't like it because that's it's essentially what rape is. It's violating a person's will, and so if they wanted it, it wouldn't be rape. So it would be a rape fantasy, but it wouldn't be rape. But you're not telling me why violating a person's will is wrong. You spank a child; they don't want to be spanked. I've never met a child that wanted to be spanked. So.
Yep.
Why is rape wrong?
Right. So because we know that through our moral conscience, this is the avenue for our knowledge, our warrant. I know that you deny that as fantasy. I don't. Most people, I think, common sense don't, including skeptics that deny it, really actually borrow, I think, necessary moral principles, necessary moral. Let's say necessary.
Why is it necessary? You're using a lot of jargon, which is kind of what you do, but you haven't even approached the question. You haven't even glanced at it.
No, saying it's necessary has answered the question. It doesn't make any sense to ask why is it necessary.
It does. Why is it necessary? Why? I don't understand why it's necessary to not rape. Necessary for what? Now, as a humanist, once again, I can answer that. I have no problem with answering it. But as a Christian, I don't understand quite how you get there. Because I can say it's necessary for a good society that we are not walking in fear that our women who are depending on us are getting raped, every 10 minutes. That would make it very hard to do business or leave the house and go to work.
What if we set aside one day for raping, or like a special holidays for raping?
Maybe you should propose that. It's been proposed in science fiction. It doesn't work out real well in those situations either. See Star Trek's. I can't remember the name of the episode where they had their I want to say their festival, the original TOS. No, the original TOS series. So it's not like we haven't explored this idea. Never turns out particularly well. But so once again, I can make a case as a secular humanist for why rape is a really bad idea. But I have yet to hear a Christian explain to me why it's wrong. The only answer, let me help you out. The only answer you can give, and the one that you're dancing around trying not to give because you know that it would be hollow, is because it violates God's will, because God says so. That's actually the only answer that you can give. But if you want to continue trying to give some other answer besides that, I extend the question a little bit further. Why do you think it's wrong?
Right. So in the first place, atheists can't provide a foundation. That's just pathetic. As to good societies, why is that logically necessarily? So it's true in every logically possible world that a good society is one in which people aren't raped. I mean, you can't prove that. That's your number one pitfall. The ultimate lens of saying, is something good for human well-being and flourishing, that's good. That's just a presupposition.
Well, I can say we've tried it in this society, in this world, and we found that it didn't work. Not raping works better than raping. I don't think I have to say that it couldn't possibly work, but we've never made it work.
Work towards what end? I'm saying you can't justify.
But I don't have to have a justifiable magical end. I can say that as far as more humans being happy and societies being functional and doing the things that we want to do as a society, it works better to not rape than rape. I don't have to go any further than that.
Yes, you do. You want to claim moral knowledge.
You do.
But I'm going to get there afterwards. But I'm saying, no, you do. You have to. This is why it gets brought up all the time, because you guys can't. It's impossible for you to provide that to answer the epistemic chain regress problem.
But I am not saying that it is a magical universal moral principle. I don't care about what you think is moral in that sense, because I think your idea of morality is warped. I think your very definition of morality is warped. So I'm not. No. You need to, this is important. I'm not trying to satisfy the Christian idea of morality. All I have to do is explain why it is better not to rape than to rape. And I can do that in secular human terms. You are the one banging on that it is an immoral, universally wrong thing to do. And I am trying to figure out how you get there.
I'm going to get there. Can I talk? You have to let me talk.
Well, okay, you've been talking. You just haven't gotten there. So go. I didn't mean to interrupt you. If you were right there, go ahead. Sorry.
Right, so David admits he can't provide a necessary foundation for morality. He can only go so far in saying, well, we've tried rape and it doesn't lead to a quote-unquote good society, or it doesn't lead to human well-being and flourishing. But he can't answer, well, who cares? Why should I care about human well-being and flourishing? He just has to say, well, that's just a given. We can't ask questions. Therefore, he can't have knowledge. He can't make a knowledge claim to anything in morality, any of judgments against the Bible. He cannot sustain that on an epistemic level in terms of claiming it is absolutely wrong to not support anything that support anything that hinders human well-being and flourishing. So that's the atheist part. It's arbitrary. It's an arbitrary standard. I have a logically necessary standard. God is the ground for all necessary moral truths. That includes necessary moral principles and
for the record, I think I could probably make a case that it's also logically necessary. I am simply saying that I don't have to. I don't have to go that extra step as a secular humanist making this argument. And as far as why, when the Christian asks, well, why shouldn't I would say that you'd just be a horrible person. In my opinion, I wouldn't want you to live in my society. I don't actually need to deal with the logical baggage that you're going to try to bring to the table.
You do if you care about interacting with Christians and engaging with Christians, though. But I'm fascinated. So you do think the standard of human well-being and flourishing is logically necessary, moral. So you're sort of like an atheist.
I don't even use the word morality in my day-to-day life. I talk in terms of ethics. When you talk about morality, you're talking about something that's supernatural. You are not, in fact, engaging with the natural world when you use the word morality. So I understand the baggage that you put in there, and I avoid that baggage.
Okay, so you don't mean logically necessary. I guess you mean factually necessary, given the laws of nature, given this universe.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I am speaking naturalistically.
Okay, well then that's still arbitrary and uninteresting to the Christian.
But if the Christian is uninterested in what is fruitful in the natural world, fuck the Christian, and I hope that you're rounded up and put in concentration camps where you don't have any attachment to the natural world, because I don't want you running around anywhere near my kids or my friends' kids if you don't have, if you think that it's okay to rape people and that you need some kind of logical baggage to keep you from doing it. Screw that.
You need an epistemic foundation upon which to claim moral knowledge for these facts, and they're aligned. The necessary moral principles are aligned to what we observe as being good or bad in reality. So you can do both. I'm not saying ignore observations. Remember, that's how I first.
So look, I don't want to interrupt you. You keep saying that I can't prove this or that, and I'm waiting for you to answer the question of why rape is wrong.
No, I was just about to. Right?
Okay, I know. It's right around the corner. Go for it.
No, but I've already started. Stop pretending I didn't answer that. I have.
Okay, well, I didn't catch it.
Look,
I can't manipulate them. This is not hypnosis. Just rewind it and listen.
Yeah, I know, but okay. So I guess it is contentious. Very good. God is the foundation. You wanted to hear it goes back to God. God is the foundation for necessary moral truths. Necessary moral truths include necessary moral principles and necessary moral duties. That's the ontological aspect of morality. How do we know that there even are necessary moral principles, let alone what are those principles? That was your original question that I was responding to, right? How do I know the principle of autonomy is something we shouldn't violate, or the principle of beneficence, we should try to do beneficial things for for humans and other sentient creatures, or that sort of thing. That's through our moral conscience. This is on an epistemic level how we arrive at moral knowledge. This is how it works. We can also supplement that through moral propositional knowledge, through the relevant circumstances that apply to the moral situation at hand, through divine revelation, the source of morality himself, the ontological source of morality of these necessary moral principles and duties, provides us with actual explicit duties, or provides us with principles in his divine revelation, which we can extrapolate to modern situations and that sort of thing. So that's the question of ontologically, how do we justify or warrant necessary moral principles, and on an epistemic level, how do we as human beings get to have moral knowledge of what those principles are and how they work? Does that satisfactorily answer?
I didn't even understand half of what you said.
Oh no. Okay.
So I'm sorry. I would not claim ignorance if I was not ignorant. I am a very proud person, and talking to you just lets me know that I need to read some more books. So
okay, well, it's my failing too. Okay, I'll try one more time, and if I fail this time, then I just suck as a communicator, I guess. And
I think if this is what the Christian has to do to explain why rape is wrong, I think it's already self-evident that there's something wrong with their argument.
I don't know why. Okay, so in the first place, you understand the distinction between the ontology question, right? That's what the moral argument's getting at, versus the epistemological issue of how humans come to have moral knowledge. Do you understand the distinction, and which of the two are you really interested in getting at here?
Barely, and I'm not sure. Okay. So the moral argument is trying to establish that there is a foundation.
Yes.
An objective foundation for where moral principles live. It is not trying to determine what those moral principles are. The epistemic question is a question of what those moral principles are and how we come to know what they are.
Okay, well, I would say that what those moral principles are could also be considered part of the ontological part. But the epistemological part is specifically, how do we come to know as human beings? How do I know what those principles are?
Okay, because when I debated with Randall Rouser on Unbelievable, he tried to make this hard distinction between the ontological portion and the epistemic portion. And when I was bringing up things that he was saying, no, this is not about what is moral and what isn't. It's about the basis of how we can know what.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't actually. Okay. Well, then I don't understand what you just said.
So put it this way. So in your blog, you seem to primarily be addressing the epistemological connection, or at least in what you said. I'm just scanning over.
I am pretty much always addressing the epistemological, mostly. I don't actually care about the ontological. Okay. I think the ontological is just BS. It has never been explained in a way that makes any sense to me, that there is some kind of foundational standard for assessing morality. So Christians can't explain that. At the end of the day, it's magic. My magic God is embodiment of goodness, and so whatever he says is good. Whatever he does is good because he is the essence of good, and so that's morality. That is not an explanation for me at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think you're right, because even on the ontological aspect, like with the moral argument, premise number 2 of someone like William Lane Craig's argument will be objective, or what I prefer, necessary moral truths, principles, and duties do exist. Oh, well, how do you prove that premise is sound? And I think the main area, that the only area that William Lane Craig gives, and there are other sources of knowledge to warrant that premise, but I think the best that I appeal to is, look, through our moral conscience. This is how we know that there are necessary moral truths, or principles and duties, like the principle of autonomy, or the principle of beneficence, which what you call human well-being and flourishing.
Right, but I would say that sense, that what you consider an innate sense, is just human evolution at work, because we have not always had that innate sense. We used to believe that a lot of things were okay. And we came to realize, well, maybe that's not okay. And so then the question becomes, well, over the last 200,000 years, how did we come to realize that, bopping a woman over the head and dragging her in a cave is maybe not a good thing? Well, it's not because God spoke to us and said, no, don't do that. We had to develop that knowledge over hundreds of thousands of years in social experimentation to see what brought us to the kind of society we wanted to live in. No, that didn't drop down from heaven. We had to work very hard to gain that knowledge, and we weeded out through a very natural selection process those who couldn't get it through their thick skulls, and we breeded those who could.
Sure.
And so that is why we have this knowledge now that says, oh, well, rape is wrong.
So you're alluding to, look, there's moral disagreements and there's moral development. Some of our moral knowledge is derivative forms of knowledge, right? We extrapolate or we learn through experience about certain things. Absolutely, that's true. And we have to remember, there are 3 sources of moral disagreement, as I explained in David Smalley and that sort of thing. And we have to assess and look at, okay, well, why do certain people do things that we feel are immoral, and try to come to an understanding of how that comes about, because we are sinful. So, for example, I think it's the Eskimos, they used to kill their own children, or one of their own children, on a regular basis. I can't remember exactly about it, but horrified Westerners, these barbarians, oh my gosh, they're killing people, their own kids and stuff like that. But when they researched into it, they found out, now, first of all, I still think that was wrong, but they had a moral justification as to why they're doing it. They thought, well, this is the only way the entire family can survive. I don't have enough food to feed everyone. Therefore, by killing one of the people, the others will get to. I'll have enough food to feed my other 3 kids, or something like that. So they felt it was morally justified, and under that lens, okay, we can get an understanding of the relevant circumstances, morally relevant circumstances, and go through the areas to find out why this disagreement is happening in light of moral principles, and then evaluate what is the correct moral action to take. So I see the moral actions are dependent on the higher moral principles, and it's not clear to me at all that human beings, once they have a proper understanding of the moral principles, I don't think we do disagree on the moral principles themselves. That could be controversial,
right? But I think look, I can ride with you through most of this, which is why I'm kind of shortcutting the process a little bit, because we've been talking for 3 hours and we've got another 3 hours to go. Just kidding, folks. Only another hour and a half. But the fact is, if that we agree on many of these principles does not help, because you take it an extra step. when I say you, I mean the Christian, you take it an extra step by saying the reason we agree on these principles is magic, because God gave them to us. And that's where I would say you've taken it a step too far. I don't need to go with God gave them to us in order to say rape is wrong, and you apparently do.
So you're sort of questioning the nature of it, but so that's the ontological aspect then, right? That's where the moral argument comes in to say, well, we need a proper foundation if these things are true, that our moral conscience attests to these things, premise 2 of the moral argument.
Right, but you see, part of the problem, and this is again where Randall Rouser and other Christians start cutting in and objecting, is when I say, okay, so if these things are coming from God, then why can't Christians agree on these overarching principles? Because there are certain principles that it seems like would create a uniformity of behavior and opinion at the very least. Even if they don't live it out to perfection, they should at least agree on these God-given principles. And yet, your conscience does not agree on certain principles. Abortion would be one of those areas where, forget us atheists, you Christians can't figure it out, can't decide whether it's right or wrong. Homosexuality, Christians are about 50-50. You can't figure it out whether it's right or wrong. And so you're saying that there is this overarching source of unifying objective moral code, but the Christians are downloading it differently.
Right. So that would be at the level of tactile what I call tactile morality, not necessarily the principles that they're disagreeing on. Like the principles, this isn't a Christian thing. This is general ethics or philosophy, moral philosophy. But
well, yeah, what I would just call humanity. But you're not satisfied to talk about it in terms of humanity. You think that there's something beyond that. And I would argue, no, the reason we disagree on these things is because there is no such thing as a unified moral principle that's objective out there. We have to figure it out and work it out and understand what kind of societies we want to have and what kind of people we want to be. And you think that there is something beyond that, but you're not providing me with any evidence of that except, well, we've got these consciences, except our consciences don't agree. So you're not giving me any reason to believe that there's anything objective about morality.
No, but you do. So our consciences do agree on the moral principles. They disagree at the tactile level. And
okay. Well, then this is a piece of academic jargon that I don't understand. So
let me explain using the abortion example. Then,
okay.
Right? So you said earlier in this podcast, look, I can agree with the principle of autonomy. Yeah. In general, it's better for sentient agents to have the autonomy to choose to do whatever or refrain from doing whatever they're capable of doing and desire to do so. Right?
I don't get that from the Bible, but I do believe that is. I believe that is a true statement. What you just said, I believe it is antithetical to Scripture.
I don't care about that at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. So your moral conscience attests to that. There's also a principle of life, which I'm sure you'll agree with because you disagree with my Molinistic defeater like crazy. And in general, unless there's a moral justification to do otherwise, we should preserve life, human life, and not take human life without a moral justification like war or something like that. These are the two principles that are involved. And there may be others as well, depending on the circumstances. But to keep it simple, here are two principles that I believe 95 to 99% of all human beings, through their moral conscience, will agree with these higher principles. But, they disagree with abortion. And it's because these two principles conflict. So all three sources of moral disagreement are possible, right? We may disagree about the facts. Well, is a fetus a human being or not? Does it have a soul or not? These are facts, more of the morally relevant circumstances that might play a role. Or the moral principles conflict with each other. And we have to evaluate, well, is preserving human life or the principle of life more important than a woman's right to choose and her autonomy? And people have differences of opinions due to the noetic effects of sin and the effects of sin on our moral conscience. So this is where on a tactile level these disagreements come into play.
Okay, but I think you're oversimplifying. So just with what you're saying about life, that's something that we all agree with. All right, life is better than death, and life is, whatever. I actually don't. I'm not a lifist in that sense. So I don't actually think that life is somehow inviolable and sacred and whatever. And in fact, I think that there are plenty of examples of life that have struggled into this world that we should eradicate before they get to draw their second breath. Now, I'm not thinking of humans when I say that in particular. I'm thinking about viruses, bacteria. Well, that's life. It made it into this world. It got here, baby. Smash it before it multiplies is my feeling on that. I think that there are certain creatures in the wild that to near human habitats, and God bless them. But we need more alligator belts and alligator soup, and fewer alligators. I don't actually believe that life is some kind of sacred or inviolable principle that we've got to respect, to some extreme extent.
That's a good point, and so I skipped over that. But that's the second of the three areas that causes of moral disagreement, right? You can question the nature of the moral principle. So you would just modify, okay, well, it's not a principle of life, but it's a principle of human life or sentient life or something like that. So you would just qualify what that principle is. There are people that might even deny, like for a time I did, I denied that there even was a principle of life, and it was more a principle of existence that I saw it as, which is roughly the same thing, but I just saw, okay, but we're not taking out their existence, we're just converting their mode of existence or something. So,
right.
So this would be a cause of moral disagreement. But yeah, our consciences are still attesting to these higher principles, which determine on a lower level our moral action.
Okay, but I can give you more examples of where I wouldn't necessarily agree even with your modified versions of higher principles. For instance, I don't care if viruses became sentient. I'd still kill them. So I think that we can find agreement on moral principles. I'm just saying there's nothing innate about it. We have to have these conversations in order to do it.
Why would you kill virus? It's assuming self-defense. So you have a moral justification that exempts.
Yeah, well, but you're assuming that self-defense is a moral justification. How do we know that? Well, we've got to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And
there's nothing innate about it, is what I'm saying. This is not. You don't learn it because God does not answer anything with regard to these moral questions.
Well, he does. Our moral consciences, through discussion of the morally relevant circumstances, and getting a better understanding of the various factual disagreements, right? This can cause one to change their mind or not. Like, certain bacteria are good for us. I wouldn't, if they became sentient, I would want to preserve them because they're beneficial. They don't actually harm.
Right, but they don't have to become sentient. I want to preserve them anyway because they are good for us. So we don't.
It's all arbitrary. It's what's good for you.
Yes, of course it's arbitrary. This is in fact the position of someone who doesn't believe in objective morality. I understand that there is a part of it that might seem arbitrary and that it's not written in the stars. We have to talk about it. We have to work through it. We have to figure it out. It's social versus pro-social. This is why I don't use terms like morality, because when you talk about morality, you have taken it out of the realm of the human experience, and you're talking about something supernatural. When you're talking about ethics and social versus pro-social behavior, now you're talking about something at the level of a human being.
Okay, so I'll just end with this then. So you are human well-being and flourishing, and or David's well-being and flourishing, if you want to get really specific, whatever. But right, you are espousing this almost as though it's a necessary moral truth via your moral conscience. Now, you don't want to say that, so you say, no, well, it's not really that. It's just a factually necessary contingent fact of our physical universe that we happen to inhabit. This is where that's what I say is arbitrary, and that's why it's not satisfactory to Christians, and never will be. You will always.
But the Christian answer is also arbitrary. You remember I started this section by asking you to tell me why rape is wrong, and you still haven't done it in a way that satisfies me, and I doubt that it satisfies the skeptic. So it's arbitrary for you too.
No, it's directly necessary. I'm claiming it's necessary. You may take issue and say, well, I don't believe that. That's fine. But
you haven't explained how it's necessary. So
how is it necessary?
Yeah, or why it's necessary. You haven't explained any of that. You appeal to our existential angst that we don't want. Most of us don't want to go around raping people, and most of us don't want the people that we love to be raped. I understand that. That's a very natural feeling, but I don't need God to tell me that. No human needs God to tell them that. And so if that's all you're appealing to, then my point stands. Be true to your morality, and don't let some God figure try to confuse you about what is right and what is wrong. You don't need it. You don't need him to know that rape is wrong. You don't need him to know that slavery is wrong. And when you see that his moral intuition in the Bible falls beneath yours, you should dump the one in the Bible and trust yours.
Okay, so I'll let this be my last word before we move on to the next part then. So look, I've explained ontologically that morality is necessary, and it's founded, ontologically speaking, in God's nature. Necessity. It doesn't make any sense to ask why is something necessary. It's just necessary. That's the nature of necessity. It doesn't make any sense to say, well, why is 1 + 1 = 2? Because it necessarily is on a logical level. So that explains the ontological aspect. Epistemologically, I've explained that we have access to these necessary moral truths through our moral conscience. I failed to mention this part, though, and it's a good point. We also have other forms of knowledge outside of our moral consciences are tainted by sin. It doesn't provide infallible or exhaustive moral knowledge in all cases. So it is supplemented by human experience and learning new things. New experiences like the internet. These are moral questions on a tactile level no one's ever asked until recently because it didn't exist. Second, we also have divine revelation. The moral lawgiver himself is divinely giving us direct tactile moral commandments or moral duties. Thou shalt not kill. Okay, not only is my moral conscience telling me that's wrong because it violates the principle, but God himself has written in a book, don't do that. Thou shalt not bear false witness. That's or lie. That's something that, believe it or not, my moral conscience didn't give me a full understanding of until it was supplemented by the Bible. So I believe there is a principle of truth. However, how would I have defined that? I would have allowed for qualifications. I think it's cool. Not cool. It's not morally ideal, but it's morally permissible to lie. I mean, if I'm going to say you can kill someone to save as many souls as possible, then my moral conscience tells me it's certainly okay to lie and tell the sky is red in order to save as many souls as possible. So it is cool for humans, but there's a difference there that God can't do that. And it's only from divine revelation that I learned that the principle of truth is absolute. There is no qualification or exemption to that principle. Otherwise, God would be able to lie to save as many souls as possible. And I wouldn't have come to that knowledge from my own moral conscience alone. It was only through divine revelation supplementing my moral conscience telling me, well, there's a principle of truth, that I was able, well, how do we define that principle of truth as being absolute, or is it qualified, or something, and oh well, because the Bible says God can't lie, it's not qualified. Therefore, I'm violating that principle every time I lie, no matter what it's for. That's a deontological absolute rule.
This is exactly a perfect example of why I say your morality, Mr. Human, is far better than when you try to couple it with some biblical principle like this mess that we just heard about lying. Lying is a good thing, and societies wouldn't be able to survive without it. There are different kinds of lies, different kinds. I used to be as naive as Dale here for much the same reasons, by the way, similar thought processes. And so I'm not beating him up as a human being, but I recognize the oatmeal that this stuff makes of your brain and your ability to think when you take it too seriously. Of course we need to lie. Of course, if your wife asks you if that dress makes her look fat, the answer is no. You look beautiful, honey. That's the answer. And if you have any other answer, screw you. I will not attend your divorce. That should happen, and I will testify against you, and she'll take the kids and the dog. You fool. Of course the answer is that's a beautiful dress. After she has slaved for 3 hours in the kitchen to make that gosh awful disgusting vomitous soup, you had better say that is the best soup you've ever had. Fuck you if you don't. That's the wrong answer. And so I'm just saying, I'm sorry, fudge you if you don't. I'm going to leave it to be
Let me clarify something here, because I recognize reality. I wouldn't do it in the cases you're saying, and that's probably a good thing why I'm going to be single for I'm single right now. But yeah, I think that there are occasions where if someone put a gun to David's head and said, lie, tell me the sky's red, I would lie. I wouldn't say that's the moral thing to do, though. I'm still violating a moral principle, and I'm sinning when I do that. But I'm doing the lesser of two evils. So that there is that conflicting. There are different ways to see the moral principles in the moral hierarchy, and I take a conflicting approach. So yeah, I would still be doing something wrong, but I would be doing the lesser of two evils, because I'm sinning if I don't lie and allow David to get killed. So on a human level, there are things where we have to sin, but God can't sin. So he can't violate a moral principle. And that's why it's important as to how we learn to qualify the remarks. So the principle of life has to be qualified with, unless there is moral justification to do so, which we all know that there are certain moral justifications to.
And where do we get those moral justifications? We derive them ourselves. This is my point always, is what it was in the first place. I'm not entirely sure what this rebuttal is about. Follow your own conscience. Even when you're wrong, you're right more often than that freaking book.
Do you need me to respond? So
no, not really.
The opposite of what David said. Just the Bible is, if you believe the Bible is divine revelation, and it's contingent upon that. I don't expect atheists to go to it for moral knowledge. And I wouldn't say, homosexuality is wrong, David R., cut it out. No, he doesn't. It's just a book to him. So you need to start with proving that it's true.
Yeah, it's just a book for everybody. So if you're sitting on the fence and you're looking at the arrow of human moral progress, look at that arrow and look at where that book sits. It's stood in the way of moral progress. I argue more often than it has pointed us in the right direction. I will take your sinful conscience over that book's advice every time, and you should too.
Not if you have sufficient reason to believe it is divinely revealed from a morally perfect God, though. If you have sufficient reason to believe that, then you're a fool. If you privilege your conscience in every single set of circumstances over and against the Bible. And by the way, for Christians, I think you are a fool if you privilege the Bible in every set of circumstances over and against your own conscience. So let me give that to the skeptics, because the Bible does have some provable errors in it. It is not an inerrant book. So it's possible that it's a very unlikely, I'm 95% certain it doesn't, but it's possible that there are moral commandment errors in the Bible. It's possible homosexuality is not a sin in the Bible. That was just a reflection of ancient Near Eastern thinking. And if your moral conscience provides you with knowledge that's stronger than that 95% certainty that the Bible is inerrant in that way, with the moral commandments, then you privilege your conscience over that. So yeah, that's my final take.
Okay, so I've only got one more objection to yours. So my very last note that I wrote is lots of time spent questioning the validity of science. So okay. I just want to point out, I'm not going to flesh that out, but Dale's speech spent an awful lot of time questioning the validity of science and trying to compare science to philosophy. You see, it's the same thing. No, it's not, and you should be suspicious of that. But the place where I want to end, because there was so much of science talk and intellect talk in Dale's argument, is scientism. This is something that a few shows have been done on, not necessarily skeptics and seekers, but I've talked about it a lot and written about it a lot lately. Christians have seemed to be on it about it lately, and so I'm going to ask Dale the question here that I couldn't get other people to answer on discussion boards and so forth. Maybe he will. I actually think I know what his answer is, but I want to give him a chance to say it out loud, which is this. So I'm not saying that science is going to always come up with perfect answers, because it doesn't. I talk about the scientific method as the best way to come up with empirical information that we can trust about the universe. And sometimes we get it wrong, and sometimes we ask a type of question that cannot at this time be answered by science, and possibly can't be answered by anything. But the question that I would ask Dale is, when science fails to give you the right answer, or if you think that is not the only way or the best way to inquire about a particular thing, what is your alternative to science?
Logic and philosophy, because logic is a proper discipline of philosophy.
Okay, so give me an example where, in terms of religion, where logic is superior to science.
Well, yeah. Well, in the first place, science is derivative from logic.
Well, okay, but I think you understand the question, but I want to keep us on point. So give me an example where you would have a religious question where science doesn't give you the answer, but some other thing does.
Sure. So our question on the ontological argument, or the nature of logically possible worlds. Is it possible for me to be wearing a red shirt at 12:37 on May 18th, 2019? When you answer no, I think that's indicative of a problem. Science can't answer that type of question. It's a proper domain of philosophical or logical reasoning as to how we evaluate something like that. So there's one example.
Okay, I don't fully understand your example, but then I think that we've established in this podcast that I am a blooming idiot who needs to read more books. So
I think higher of you guys and the audience, I guess. Like I do think that they're sure. I sometimes use technical jargon, but
I don't understand your example in the least bit. I don't understand how I specifically ask for a religious question that can't be answered by science, that can be answered by something else. And you give me logical possible worlds. I can assure you, I have never preached a sermon on logical possible worlds. Maybe I was a bad preacher, but I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to do with that answer.
Okay, well, I guess I didn't understand what you meant by religious. I was conflating it with philosophical.
Well, I think that is, in fact, something you do all the time, is you conflate religion with philosophy. But yeah, try to answer that question in the spirit intended. Give me, because this is the spirit that it's used. Okay, when Christians talk about scientism, what they are saying is, our God can't be proved there. And so they say that it's not useful because, and they think that everything has to be proven by science. They're scientistic. Screw that. Okay, give me a real, actual example of a religious problem that can be solved some other way besides science. Just give it to me.
And the example I gave wasn't like the ontological
possible world. Come on, the ontological argument. The ontological argument is not a religious question. It's a philosophical question. That is not a question that you are going to hear in a church with people trying to struggle with their bills.
Okay, well, what about another? This is philosophical. I was going to say the anti-realism, realism debate.
Oh God, you're getting worse. What?
These have religious.
Do you know what religion is?
Okay, the morality. Science doesn't speak to morality at all, or values.
Okay, Sam Harris disagrees with you,
to mere descriptive. What?
I said Sam Harris disagrees with you, but okay, I will.
Will begin to. So conformists. There's an expert that disagrees. I abandon my belief. I retract. Okay.
About all right. Time. You heard him. You heard him say it, people.
You should have just told me people disagree.
I've been trying to. Look, okay, so you think that morality is something that's outside of the domain of science, but you think religion can give a better answer. So how is religion a form of, so science is a methodology for obtaining knowledge.
Yes.
What do you think the methodology of obtaining moral knowledge is? Because I'm trying to figure out what you're putting up as an alternative to science.
Yeah, so the methodology from moral knowledge is what we've been discussing this whole time. It's through the moral principles, our moral conscience, supplementing with the knowledge about the factual, morally relevant circumstances that apply. These are certain methodologies that we have to come to certain knowledge. It's because our moral consciences are within us. It's more direct. It's on the level of properly basic beliefs. We just know that
properly basic beliefs. That's something I can get a fistful of. Yeah, it is. But this is where it always comes back to that for you.
How about I don't know what you're going to consider philosophy versus religion.
I don't know. Have you been to a church? Have you sat in a Sunday school? Have you? I mean, honestly,
like Jesus died for our sins. I don't know what you're.
Okay, well, there's
or creation.
That's definitely a creation. That's a religious idea, I suppose. I'm just trying to figure out where it is Christians are saying that science is so insufficient, to figure out what they're putting in its place. It seems to be a pretty straightforward request, since Christians are always banging on about how bad science is at figuring this stuff out, and since you spent an hour talking about it, and suggesting that we atheists are just scientistic and we're not really looking at the other alternatives, I'm trying to get a good sense of what you think the alternatives are.
Right. So philosophy and logic is what I was saying. That's the second order discipline. That is the normative discipline that provides the justifications of the presuppositions. The scientific method, the historical method, are all based or derive from that. And
so is it fair for me to say that if science doesn't give you a favorable answer for your religious claims, then use philosophy, and that will serve as just as good an answer as a scientific answer would in other fields?
Well, I think philosophy provides us, in some cases, better. It depends on what the question you're asking is, right?
So philosophy is the validation of religion in the same way that science is the validation for matter.
Well, philosophy is the validation of science as well. It's the valid logic. Put it this way: that logic is the validation that underpins science. It underpins religion.
Okay, so what I just said is accurate then. I'm just trying to get at a reasonable statement that I can use to understand your position, that you think that philosophy is a way of finding truths about metaphysical ideas.
And physical ideas as well, right? Like there's a reason why there's a philosophy of science, right? Because this is where I get into the external philosophy of science view versus the internal philosophy of science view. Not everything reduces down to proper scientific methodology. There isn't even a such thing as the scientific methodology. There are multiple methodologies. That was one of my other points as well. I mean, the multiverse probably doesn't fit into the standard scientific method that you learn back in high school and that sort of thing. It's not observable. It's not a repeatable thing. It's not something that we can measure, that sort of thing, right? It's a scientific model.
No, I don't. Well, okay, yes, but I don't. Well, anyway, go ahead.
So my main point here is not so much about religion. I didn't even have like a religious methodology in mind. I could come up, well, we have divine revelation. That's a method for coming to knowledge in religion, and that sort of thing. But everything is underpinned by logic. God is a logical being by a necessity of his own nature. That's why the laws of logic, just like the laws of morality, are grounded in God on an ontological level. So logic is what I'm trying to say. It's broader than just science. Science is a great tool. It uses the laws of logic to validate its presuppositions. Religion can use logic to validate its history, can use logic to validate its presuppositions, right? It uses inductive forms of reasoning and inference to the best explanation and various criteria like explanatory powers, scope.
Okay, so I would just say that I think you are conflating empirical observation and logic. They're not the same things, and I think that the reason you are doing that is to try to privilege the religious position as being equal to any other position because, look, you see, it uses the same methodology. It's the same as science. And that is just not true at any level. But I am happy to let the audience hear you say that and wrestle with that because I think that's fine. And I would warn the audience that anyone who comes to you who wants to either deprecate science or elevate something else as being equal to science is someone that you should probably avoid allowing to teach your kids true things about the world.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely foolish. So that this is the internal philosophy of science view, right? And no, logic is what you should privilege. The scientific method derives from epistemic logical laws of logic, or philosophical debates about realism versus anti-realism, for example. It utilizes different forms of logical reasoning, deductive reasoning, statistical, inductive and deductive statistical reasonings. All of the methods, science is a great tool. I don't want it, I'm not denigrating science as a valid avenue for knowledge. So I hope that's not what you're getting. But my main point is to get people to stop being stuck, skeptics, stop being stuck in this mode of, oh, this is the only way to come to knowledge. If you come to knowledge in any way that's not quote unquote scientific or considered part of a scientific one of the scientific methodologies, then it's irrelevant. No, it's logic that underpins that. And logic can be applied to various disciplines, history in different way, science and theology or religious beliefs. So don't be closed-minded and just assume, oh, there's only empirical reality and the scientific method is the only valid path to coming to knowledge. No, go deeper to the higher order of logic, and that's what'll get you truth, and apply that to various disciplines and various claims.
Okay, so do you have one more for me? Unless that's the last one I've got for you.
Okay, so yeah, all through your senses, I think was your last point. Oh, be true to the search.
Yes. We can try to take both of those because they're both important. So if you want to rebut both of those, we'll just do them back to back.
Okay, so be true to your senses. So this sort of does relate to the empiricism or scientism debate that we were just talking about.
Yes, right.
So look, most rational people, most experts in the world are on what are called ontologists. They hold that there's physical reality and abstract entities, the numbers or propositions, universal relations, and these sort of things, modal logic, and stuff like that, also exist and are real entities for investigation. So I take the ontologist position. Most atheists, lay atheists, and a lot of atheist scientists like Peter Atkins or Richard Dawkins, they'll take the naturalist point of view, and they'll say only things that you can access with your five senses and or apply the scientific method to, those are the only real entities. Physical, material reality is the only thing. And I would say be true to your senses, not just with physical reality, but also be true to your senses, your moral senses, through your moral conscience. Your modal evaluating faculty senses tell you about what's possible. If you're forced to the absurd position that you think it's logically impossible that someone wears a red shirt, or that there could be I don't know, I could be wearing green shoes or something like that, you've been pushed to an absurd place where you're denying your own intuitional knowledge and senses. I have free will. I made the claim in my series. It's obvious. All of these things, David and skeptics will say, no, these are all illusions. The only thing that's real is this physical stuff that is privy to scientific investigation. No, don't be so limited. Don't deny your senses as to the nature of reality, and put this artificial distinction between quote unquote plausible and quote unquote fanciful, as Val would call it, explanations. If it's logically possible, then it's something that's a real entity that needs to be taken into consideration, regardless of whether it's abstract or physical. It doesn't matter. So that's my take on that. Don't deny your senses that you have free will, or that there's moral truths and that sort of thing. Be true to the search.
Well, hold on. Do I get to respond to that?
Yeah, I thought you need to do both at once, though. So.
Well, yeah. So I think this is kind of a continuation of the last discussion a little bit. So I do think that we have a hard difference of opinion here that can't be sussed out this season. There was an episode that Dale and I were going to do on this subject, these ontological realities, quote unquote, numbers, things of that nature, and we did not get to do it, and so I'm not going to try to cram all of that here. But I would take issue with his idea that most people are on the ontological side of this. I don't know that that's the case at all. He would have to show his work there.
Most philosophers at least say that.
Okay, well, maybe most philosophers. I don't know what philosophers do in the dark of night. So that said, we do have a hard difference of opinion. So when you look at the argument from Numbers, which I always thought was a bad argument even when I was a Christian, so I have not actually changed my opinion on this from Christian to non-Christian. So you do not have to hold Dale's opinion to be faithful to Christianity here. But I don't think that numbers are things. Numbers are not things. And I think that what Dale conflates, and when I say Dale here, I mean people who take this argument, I think they conflate abstract ideas with things. So it's not actually the materialist that's saying everything is a thing. It's actually the Christian that's trying to say that everything is a thing. Every idea is a thing. It's personified or made real in some way, in some realm. So love is not just a reaction of chemicals and a description of feelings and human relationships. No, it is a thing in and of itself that we can have and access or not have, but it's actually a thing. And so the number 3 is not just the relationship between an item and another item and another item. No, 3 is a thing that is made real somehow in the universe. And so even if you took away all the things, there would still be 3 as a thing, kind of thing. This is just a very different way of viewing things than I think that most ordinary people view it. It's a much deeper conversation than we're going to be able to take on. But yeah, I would say that when you conflate abstract ideas like morality, ethics, pro-social versus antisocial behavior, and you say, oh, well, that's a thing that has to be reckoned with in the world, then I think that you are going into the realm of fantasy and you're leaving real world things. But I'm happy to leave this argument incomplete. I just want I just wanted to flesh out what that argument really was about underneath.
I'll try to, for the audience, I'll try to give a great video by William Lane Craig that I noticed I linked to before, but no one clicked on it. If you're interested in this, you should really look at it on divine aseity. So, yeah, totally apart from looking at God's divine aseity, he does get into the realist and anti-realist debate of things like of abstract entities. So I take the position I'm a realist and I'm a divine conceptualist. So these things exist as thoughts in the mind of God. But there are different positions. William Lane Craig takes a different position. He's an anti-realist of some version. So yeah, I'll provide a source if you're interested in that. You can look into that a little bit and extrapolate what we're sort of getting at here. But yeah, my main point was just to implore skeptics, don't deny your experiences. Don't assume or assert that, oh, these are just illusions because they're a different type of entity to physical things or entities. Don't deny
a concept is not a thing, people. An emotion is not a thing. These are descriptions of things and or properties of things, but they are not themselves things. Descriptions and properties are not things that exist supernaturally in the mind of a god. They're just descriptions and properties. They're nothing more than that.
But you don't have to take my view. I wasn't. The point isn't about divine aseity or saying whether they're supernatural. But yeah, they are things. That's the nature of the debate. How do you define a thing? Right. So I mean, 1 + 1 = 2 is not nothing. It's not a no thing.
It actually is a no thing. It is a description. That is all it is. 3 describes a thing associated with another thing, associated with another thing. It's just a word we use to describe that. It is not in and of itself a thing. If you take away the 3 things, there is no 3.
Okay. So that's what the debate is about there. Now, being true to the search, what was your argument? No. What was your argument about the search again?
Oh yeah, that was among my finer moments, and they just slipped right past you, huh?
Well, I had points for all of them, but I didn't write them down. So.
Oh, you didn't write them down. So I am actually the only one that took notes here, which is weird because I never take notes. And Dale is always banging away on his notes. So interesting little inside baseball there. It's not important to anybody.
I usually take notes by hand, though, so I didn't have any paper or anything. That's blame David for waking me up early before I ate breakfast.
Yeah, like the usual time we usually talk about these podcasts. Make your search falsifiable rather than philosophical. So we've already talked about this a little bit. Philosophy is not, in fact, equal to something that's tangible. So if you are making a claim of something that's tangible, don't accept philosophy as an answer to your search. If God answers prayers and that's a part of your religion, that's not a philosophical claim at all. That's a claim of the real world. Find a way to test it. So don't accept philosophy for falsifiable claims. Otherwise, it's not a real search. It's a faith position. While we're at it, a true search is for things with real answers that can be verified. So if you say that you're on a search for metaphysical truths, but there's no way to actually get a real metaphysical answer that can be verified, then at the end of the day, you're just going to end up with a faith position, and it's not a real search. And then C was when you find the answer, stop searching. You guessed it. Otherwise, it wasn't a real search. It's just a faith position. Because if you keep searching after you found your answer, but you don't like your answer, and so you keep searching, then it's not a real search.
Okay. So yeah, my first point is complete utter bunk when you say that philosophy is unfalsifiable or not confirmable. Who said that? There are many ways.
You disagree with me on philosophy. Shocking.
Yeah, no, but I'm sorry. I mean, there have been many ways, and you have provided. Have you listened to season 1 of Skeptics and Seekers? You provided many types of ways to try and falsify various theological or philosophical claims I've made. So yeah, it is falsifiable in principle, and often religious claims are falsified in certain ways. So
and we don't disagree then. Make your search something that can end in a falsifiable result.
But I think we need to be open to the truth even of unfalsifiable claims, and we've agreed on that falsifiability is not the be-all and end-all of scientific truth. I mean, of truth. Even in science, there are different positions between a Karl Popper falsificationist point of view versus a justificationist with people like what's his name, Carl Hempel, for example. So yeah, there are different takes on that, and falsification is a helpful tool for arriving at knowledge, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Unfalsifiable things can be proven true. It can be true. It can be true. So yeah, don't.
So
just saying, limit yourself.
Yeah. So be suspicious of your supernatural claims of supernatural things that can't be falsifiable. I would agree with Dale that it doesn't mean that it can't be true. There are lots of things that are true that we can't prove, but you are in a position to not know that they're true. So you you cannot then say, assume that you're going to have a higher degree of certainty than you would with things that are falsifiable. You can't have as high a degree of certainty because it's simply not falsifiable. It's not provable. So, yeah, it's like looking at a jar of jelly beans and saying, I think there are 1,049 jelly beans in there. Well, if you can never open the jar, you can never count them, then that's an unfalsifiable claim. Here's the thing. You might be right. Doesn't matter. You don't have the privileged position of knowing that you're right, and so it's a bad claim, even if it happens to be true.
Right, but you can also confirm things without falsifying others that are related claims. So, with justificationism, for example, you can get various positive test results that are related to something that you can't falsify, and then through that you justify your faith in that unfalsifiable claim. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking along the lines of my Molinistic defeater.
That doesn't sound right to me at all.
Science does this all the time. Okay. This is a position of science.
And what I am warning, which is what I said before, get a falsifiable. If you're searching for things, for claims that make actual tangible claims, then your search needs to end in something a falsifiable result, and not something that's merely philosophical. The thing that you need to be aware of with philosophical answers to things is the smartest person in the room wins. So you can say, well, good philosophy points to truth no matter who the smartest person in the room is, but you won't know it. You can listen to a debate and you can think, well, one person clearly won the debate because they were the smartest person in the room, but they may be dead wrong. So getting answers based on philosophy just largely depends on how privileged you are to have the right kind of mind to sort out whether the philosophy is perfect or not. With falsifiable claims, the stove is hot. You just put your hand on the stove. You got it worked out. And so go with falsifiable claims when possible. They are superior in the real world, philosophical claims about things that are tangible.
I don't know if I get the last word. Like, I thought when it's your claim, I get the last word, and then on my claim, you get the... I don't
care who gets the last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, 'cause you can take the last word.
It's the last show. I don't care.
So that's not the case about falsificationism necessarily. Yes, it's a good tool. It's preferable if you can get it, take it. But what we should be looking at is a justificationist perspective. If you can confirm your theory is true, either directly or indirectly, and you can confirm that to greater and greater degrees, that's when you're justified in doing it. Falsification, the principle of falsification is just another way of potentially confirming that a claim is true. So that's not the be-all, end-all. Don't dismiss philosophical claims willy-nilly, like what David wants to have you do there. Mm-hmm. The last point here.
There are two others, actually. So a true search is for things with real answers that can be verified. And you're probably thinking that those two things are the same thing, and they're very close. But I think that there are a lot of people who think that any question that you can formulate makes for a good question, a good search, and I disagree with that entirely. So you are not necessarily on a true, good, reasonable, rational search simply because you are trying to figure out, how many grains of sand are on Mars. It's not a true search. It's not a good search. It's a stupid search. It's a waste of your time. There's no way to verify the answer. Shut up and move on to a real search. Because if you're going to try to come up with an answer to that question, other than going to Mars and counting the grains of sand, then you're just going to end up in a faith position. So make sure that the question that you're asking is one that can actually be answered.
Okay, so here's your a skeptical assumption. You assume that all these religious or philosophical claims can't be confirmed.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that in that objection. Although I do tend to think that. I am simply enjoining the listener, to think seriously about the kinds of questions that you're asking, the kinds of things you're searching for. You call it a search, and you elevate it as something virtuous, that you are searching for this thing. But ask yourself, is this thing something that can actually be ascertained? And if it is not a search that you are on at all. You are just on a faith position.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, the last point that you brought up was when you finished your search, stop.
Yes.
Okay, so great. That seems like a bit hypocritical to me, because you would never say that about me.
Yes, I would.
Never say that. You think I should just stop and I've done my work?
Yes, I would. Let me flesh that out for you, because I think that you have a misunderstanding about me on this, and have all season, frankly. So let me put this in terms of the pro-Christian position. If you have made whatever you consider an honest search for God, and you believe that to the best of your ability you have found the answer and there is a God, do not keep searching, except that there is a God. The only reason you wouldn't accept it is because you have reason to doubt your answer. So if you don't doubt your answer, stop searching and then deal with the reality of that God. Now, I would still say that doesn't mean that you become a Christian. Because you've found a God, there are other questions that you need to ask before you become a Christian. The existence of God simply is kind of the beginning of that. And it's a major thing to accomplish, but it doesn't end your search there as far as Christianity goes, because that's another question entirely. But you should not spend the rest of your life belly aching over whether there is a God or not, unless you have reason that comes up later on that makes you doubt your original answer. So yes, do your search, stop searching, live with your consequences, and move on to the next thing. This is just as true for atheists. If you have done your honest search for a God, and at the end of it, you are convinced that you have done the best search you can and you have found no God, stop searching and live your life accordingly. To do anything else is just a faith position saying that you should keep looking for a God. And there is no reason why you should, unless you doubt your results. In which case, you didn't really do a good search.
Okay. I think I agree and possibly disagree. So I think the way you said it, yeah. Let's put it this way. If you got 100% warrant that atheism is true, or that God exists or he doesn't exist or something, for example, you stop right there. Just be careful of the distinction between warrant and mere psychological certainty, though. As long as you're mindful about that, make sure that you're trying to achieve warrant. And if I've got 100% warrant about 1 + 1 equaling 2 and not 3, I don't need to investigate that anymore. My search has stopped before it even began, so to speak, on that question. However, if you're anything less than that, then you have to remain open, because there's that inherent doubt. Even if it's 1%, there's that 1% doubt that maybe Christianity is false, or maybe God doesn't exist, or Islam is false or something, or atheism is false. Then you need to remain open. Now, I don't, as I've tried to explain, I have my real secret criteria, and the most controversial, I think, I hope I've read the audience, is it's not so much being open or being willing to obey the truth and that sort of thing. It's the second one of being actively seeking. Well, what does that mean? And I'm constantly, you got to be in a library for the rest of your life. You got to get a PhD in philosophy and religions and all of this. And that's never been what I said. It's not that onerous. It's for a reasonable person, which is the legal definition. An average person, average intelligent. This is what David likes, right? The guy sitting in the pew or in the bar drinking a beer, they got to do the best they can. Um, and yeah, God will reveal the truth to them in time. So yeah, the point to David's point is, if you don't have 100% certainty, then there's always that inherent doubt. You should always check out what's going on. Maybe I gave a nuanced new argument that I'm not aware of anybody providing with the messianic prophecy thing. I just invented it. Here's a unique take that might work. So maybe 5 years from now, Joyce or Robert Parr or something listened to the show and they actually did the work on that and crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, which I didn't do in that 4-part series, and they present it 5 years from now. You should be checking and, oh, hey, there's a new argument. Like maybe once a year or once every 2 years, you kind of do a little Google search to see what's new in the field of apologetics for a couple weeks or something, just to see what's going on. And you encounter new evidence. Let me evaluate this. Is it good or not? Or maybe you go back to the resurrection and, there's a new item of evidence now or something, or a new form of argument. Okay, I'll study that for a little bit and look into that. So yeah, that's my only take there. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. That leads into my last point, which I don't think David has any notes on or wants to address or something. But this is really my impassioned plea that I'm most passionate about. Is actually, I'm not going to respond to the argument from ignorance or something. I think I did that already. But I've developed an approach, an 11 premise argument that I'm very proud of. I think I've gone above and beyond anyone I've seen in terms of developing a consistent way, systematic way to evaluate other religions. I hope to fill out those premises as a book, a very large book or series of books or something, or put it up online for free for people to check out, where I detail the case for each premise and provide the warrant as to why I think they're sound. But it'll compare. It's an exercise in comparative religions too. It'll look at some evidence for Hinduism or Buddhism and compare that to what we have with Christianity and show that Christianity comes on top. My criteria for identifying a G-belief authenticating event is something that I'm very proud of. I think I've gone slightly beyond what I've seen. Most people just saying, okay, well, it's an extraordinary event or improbable according to natural law, and it's a religious context. So I've fleshed out what those criteria mean a little bit more in ways that, with my notion of subsumability, I don't think anyone's really mentioned that I've seen from Christian philosophers or atheist philosophers and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm going to put this in the attachment, in skeleton format. So just listing out my premises, as well as premise 8, my criteria. But that's something I'm really proud of. I've come up with a systematic way that could be helpful for us, and should be acceptable to skeptics. At least if you accept the skeptical version from the argument of confusion, or what I call undue confusion, then you should be on board with me in this argument as well, and think that there's something here. So yeah, that's what I wanted to leave you guys with. I thank the audience for sticking with me and David throughout the season. Even when I've had some interesting back and forths with you guys in the comments, I have appreciated. Even when I agree or disagree with the feedback I've gotten, I have tried my best here to consider it and give a response and try my best to show that I'm engaging with what the other side has to say. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the thing that you're going to put out, Dale, is that the full 280 pages, or are you?
Oh, no,
do you
no.
have a condensed version?
Yeah, I'm just putting out the condensed version. So that was on the Shroud that you're talking about. I'm not. That's just one chapter in the.
Yeah.
That's premise 11.
It was a
I'm
280-page chapter. I was thinking you might want to shrink it down a little bit. Just,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. We'll see what I can do. First, I got to finish everything in full that I want to say, and then I'll maybe edit it down or something. But yeah, it'll be years before. But what I'm going to be doing is just the premises of my art. So premise number one, God exists. That's going to be an entire chapter in my book. That's very detailed in that. But I just have the list. Premise one, God exists. I don't have my arguments or reasons written up.
It's going to be good. I look forward to it. I think it is a good thing that you have done this work. I've, as alluded to here just now, I've seen a bit of it. Probably the chapter that I would be least interested in. And you're talking about. I mean, you call it a book. You're not writing a book. You're writing. You're writing a compendium. This is a set of volumes on something. If this were a college dissertation, it would be rejected for being too long. They would tell you to narrow it down. So.
Yeah, this is going to be huge, but it's my. I don't know. I see it as sort of my legacy. Like, this is something I can contribute, and maybe it's not fully appreciated while I'm alive, but maybe, who knows, 200 years from now or something, someone might see value in it.
It's going to take you 200 years to finish it. It's a lot of writing, man. So
some premises are. I mean, like, one of the premises is there's religious confusion. I mean, I could write that in a paragraph. So, like, yeah. There are a couple. There are a few of the premises that are going to take me a long time, like the God exists one, or the evidences. But yeah, others will be shorter, hopefully. So
I'm with you. I'm on your side here. So let me know when you get more of that in a form that, excuse me, that audiences can digest, and well, I don't mind helping you distribute that. I like writing, so writing's good stuff. And just so the audience knows, my book Red Letters, which is short as opposed to long, probably 150 pages, and of formatted pages, not very long at all. Easy read. That's been done for a long time. I've just been picking at the editing part of it, and editing is a thing that you can do forever. You're never really done editing a book, and I've got to, at some point, just call it, which I am not ready to do yet. So, but when that comes out at some point, you're going to have to pay for that. Okay, so there will be a version of this that might be a Patreon version. There might be something that goes along with that. I thought about doing a special podcast on this subject of Jesus, things that Jesus taught and said, and whether it was really a good teacher or not. Red Letters. The full name of this project is Red Letters: The Worst Ethical and Practical Teachings in History. Speaking of the teachings of Jesus, and just taking a deep dive, a look at a layman's look at what Jesus actually said, what he actually taught. In fact, Helen Painter from last week has agreed to come on next season and have a full-on debate on this subject, and so that's something that I hope happens. But that's a project that will come out at some point, and the standalone version of the book will cost probably $3, something like that. So start saving now.
Fork it over, Tara.
Start.
Itching to support you, I think, with the Patreon.
I hope there are plenty of people itching to support me. That'd be nice, because microphones aren't free, and dog food isn't free. So,
I think we built up a sufficient core of audience that's loyal to you. Even when that what was his name, Reza came out giving his advice, I think you had quite a number of people backing you up. So yeah.
Well, but also Reza was an ass. So I mean, Reza wasn't just some guy who didn't like me. People don't. That's okay, right? Even in your economy of manners, I don't think that Reza would be someone that you'd be having a beer with. But it's fun to find those people from time to time. I'm glad they don't know where my real address is, but but that's okay. You run into those, but.
Well, thank you for supporting me, Riza. Please don't go against me. I appreciate all my fans.
Thank you for supporting me. Please don't hurt me. Please don't.
I'm scared of him, not Tara. But,
well, that makes all of us.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. So we thought we had seen the crazy, but right at the end, and you thought that you were persecuted, my friend. No, sir.
I have to admit, I was impressed with the way you handled that. You didn't make the mistakes that I sometimes do.
No, it's not. Look, it's just hate mail. It wouldn't be my first piece of hate mail. So,
all right.
You get used to it after a while.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, it has been it's been a delight. Yes, this episode. It's probably going 4 hours. So what the listener doesn't know is we've had to stop at least once. We've got a lot of audio problems that we're having to edit out and try not to lose some of the conversation. But I could cut out an hour of conversation. This podcast would still have been too long. So Tara, if you walked your dog through this entire podcast, take your dog to the vet. It's too long. Their little legs can't handle this. Don't do that to them. Going out with a bang. There was a lot of stuff that we covered. So I'm sure some of them, like Darren, will be like, "Yay! I wanted 5 hours." Yeah. Screw you, people. This has been awful.
I haven't eaten at all today. So.
And I've got stuff to do today that I don't even know if I've got time to do now. So this has been disruptive, to say the least. But one of the things that we decided to do was to take the leash off and just let it go. Whatever we got, just say it. And to that end, I will make my final plea, although I usually give the respondent the last word, which is, look, this is not just mental masturbation. It is that, to be sure, but it's not just that. There's more here. Now, Dale thinks that your immortal soul is at stake, so he would agree that there's more going on here. I think the one life that you have to live is at stake here. And so I think that you should be very careful and guard yourself against philosophies and worldviews and religions that make you the villain in your story. You are not the villain in your story. You are not broken. You're not diseased with some kind of sin miasma. You are fully human. Not only human, fully human. Gloriously human. And hey, there are always things that we can improve. So if you drink too much, cut it out. If you've got a drug problem, seek help. There's help. Suffering from depression, overeating, bad cholesterol. There are things that you can do, things that we can do. Maybe you've got a bad temper and you need some anger management. You know what? That doesn't make you a bad human. It makes you a human. And so don't get down on yourself by things that other people over centuries have called human imperfections and that make you somehow subhuman or less than what you should be. You're exactly where you are. And that's exactly where you should be. And I'm glad to have you sharing this planet with me.
Was that to me? Oh, thank you.
Actually, not to you. You, I tolerate sharing the planet with. No, for everyone though. These are serious matters, and so I don't want you taken in by vain or empty philosophies that somehow suggest you are less than what you ought to be. So I just want to leave it there and thank the audience for giving us a listen. Next week we have whatever it is you do with your time, because Dale and I will not be doing this next week. At some point, there will probably be some other stuff that shows up in the podcast feed. When Dale and I get bored, we'll do something. We'll put something in there. But for now, season 1 is over. I don't know when season 2 will begin. Probably not before the fall. We will give you updates, probably over on the Unbelievable board. And I think that's all we've got. Dale, anything else?
I guess next couple weeks, as I said, I'm going on the Right to Reason podcast to discuss the Abraham test as well as the problem of evil in general. So I'll try to record that on my end and put that up for people to listen to. He doesn't have a paywall, so you'll be able to hear the full thing. That's June 1st. We're recording that, so sometime after that it'll be up.
Okay, and so there's nothing else to say except goodbye, everybody.
All right, goodbye, everyone.